Hello everyone, Simon here, and in this video we'll paint the heroes from the Marvel Crisis Protocol core set. If you wanna see how to paint the villains of this core set, there will be a video about that too, but now, let's do this. So before I even start painting my miniatures, I will of course prime them with a black spray, and on top of that I will add zenithal highlight using either really light gray or a white primer. And when my miniatures are primed and ready, I will set up my wet palette. I'm pouring some water over a few pieces of the toilet paper, and over that I will put a little piece of parchment paper which I will spread and flip so it is wet from both sides. The Spider-Man is mainly red and blue, so you wanna start with one of those colors. I picked Mephiston Red to start. First, put it on your wet palette and thin it down quite heavily, as you will use it as a glaze. Now you can start painting all of the red parts using this super thinned down paint. This way you have control over the saturation and you can add more if you need to. This step is actually very similar to having a 3D coloring book. For that reason, avoid hitting any areas that will be blue. You can also see that because of zenithal highlighting, there will be naturally some shades. I would recommend glazing more times over highlighted areas and less times over those shades. So this is the first step. The red will be still improved, but this is the foundation. With ultramarine blue, I will repeat this process of glazing. And you certainly want to put consistent layers over each other while it is still wet, so there won't be any quote-unquote coffee stains while the paint is drying up. If you want to add more saturation, just wait till it's dry to avoid this. You can also see that I'm getting rid of excess paint using my glove, which is also useful to test out your paint thickness. If you don't use gloves, your hand will be good enough for this. As you can see here, I am using upstrokes or downstrokes depending on where I want the pigment to be the most. The places that your brush will touch the last will of course have the most pigment, so keep that in mind when painting. Now I'm getting some black and I will paint all of the borders on his suit. That means around his eyes and the borders separating his feet, hands and around his chest. There's also this symbol in the middle of his chest and on his back, so paint it too. Since black is a well-pigmented color, try not to hit any area that is red or blue already, so you will save yourself a headache fixing that. While I still have the black here, I will paint all of the spiderweb lines on his suit with it. I would recommend thinning down the black quite a lot, so you can fix your mistakes easily, because believe me, they will happen. If you don't manage to paint the lines with one brush stroke, just repeat it until you're happy with that. After doing that, I'm coming back to my Mephiston Red and I'm fixing all of the mistakes that I have made along the way. You can also thin down your red to the point that it is sort of transparent, so when it gets into cracks, the black lines will still be visible. With that step done, I will do pretty similar thing with Evil Sunz Scarlet to highlight the red, but I will place it mainly on the places exposed to light, as those are gonna be brighter. Even though you wanna thin down your paint, definitely don't overdo it, and also don't hit the black lines, because this time it could be more visible. For Spider-Man's eyes, I'm using Ulthuan Grey to cover the lenses. This might take you a few layers, so just take your sweet time. I have used grey first, because that way I can use pure white to highlight edges of the lens to make it stand out a little more. The white might also take you some time to build up, so once again, take your time. To finish the red part of Spider-Man's suit, I will take Fire Dragon Bright Orange and I will thin it down quite a lot. That way you can just wipe any excess paint with your fingers. This is gonna be the final highlight of the red, so just glaze over the most exposed areas, just like the top of his head, his nose, hands, shoulders, and a little bit around his torso. Since the orange is super watered down, you can go over the black lines a little bit, but once again, don't drown them in that. Remember that less is more in this case, and you can definitely add more later if you want. For highlighting of all the black parts, I am using Thunderhawk blue. And with that, I will pick out his spider symbols, borders of his suit, and eyes. I have also decided to add more saturation to the blue parts of his suit, so I'm adding some Ahriman blue to it. I'm using mostly downstrokes here, so I won't overdo it. For final highlights on the blue suit, you can just add moderate amount of white to your blue and you will highlight some of the edges on his legs. I will do this slowly with the most precise brush that I got, DaVinci Maestro 000. So some of you guys keep asking me which brushes do I prefer to use. And now, while it would make a great video on its own, I will explain it here just a little bit. So on regular techniques such as base coating and washing, you can use really just any regular brushes, for example Citadel, layering brushes, or just any other kind, really. But when you are painting those details, you certainly want to invest a little bit more. For example, this little brush here, called DaVinci Maestro 000, cost me around $10 and the value is awesome. I would also recommend Winston & Newton Series 7 brushes. I think that even Darren Latham uses them. And what you are looking for is a brush with a really nice sharp tip that holds a lot of paint. So just pretty much look for a brush that holds a nice tip, that holds a lot of paint, and that has really dense bristles, and you are just good to go. But remember, you have to take care of them. And this is it for the Spider-Man. To save us time, I will do the bases once all heroes are finished. Now it's time to paint our guy, Elon Musk on steroids, Iron Man. And you can clearly see that this guy is sprayed with metallic paint, and I have used airbrush with really light metallic paint, so either use that or any kind of really light metallic spray can. I have kicked things off with yellowish contrast paint to cover all of the yellow areas. If you are not sure where to place any of the paints, just as always, look at the box art or do it according to your feeling. I am placing this yellow around his chest, on his arms, his mask, and on some parts on his legs. I will continue with yet another contrast paint for the red armor. Contrast paints are great for painting colored metallics, since that metallic shine is still coming through the contrast paint. Now, many people put emphasis on the importance of applying one thick coat with the contrast paints, but I think if you put one consistent layer over your mini without coming back to what you painted, it is gonna be just fine, whatever the thickness might be. This is what you get after the application, and clearly the metallic shine is still there. Because I was not really that happy with the yellow, I took Retributor armor and covered some of those areas once more. I have also decided to cover some of the parts with regular metallic paint, which in this case was chainmail silver. After that, I added Runefang steel to my Retributor armor and I started highlighting all of the yellow / bronze / golden parts. You certainly wanna pick out the area around his eyes, since the face will make the biggest impression on your miniature. To improve the red armor, I have used Evil Sun Scarlet, which is pretty much my go-to red highlighting color. This time, however, I have watered down this paint quite heavily and I will glaze the armor to make it even more saturated. As always when highlighting, put brighter paint on those areas that are exposed to more light. Now I wanna shade just the recesses of this little guy. Before that, however, I have to varnish him with gloss varnish. Use either airbrush or a spray can. When varnishing, be sure that you are hitting the miniature from all sides so it is well protected. Before this step, I have used a mix of odorless, white spirit and a black oil pigment to create an oil wash. And once again, I have used this exact wash to shade my terrain for Marvel Crisis Protocol, so if you want, you can check out that video if you want. But anyway, the gloss varnish should really protect your existing paint job from the really aggressive white spirit, otherwise things could get ugly. Now you will see that the oil wash is spreading very nicely along those cracks and recesses without staining anything around. Great feature of this is that you can wipe off the excess wash without damaging your paint job. So just carefully apply it wherever you find fit and let it dry. And now you can see that this miniature is even more well defined with a nice contrast. The last step that we are gonna do here are blue energy sources on his chest and his hand. For that, use any combination of blue and white. I will start by applying just the blue on these areas and also by hitting surrounding surface around these sources. Just really slowly build up this glow effect by glazing towards the middle of your light source. I am also adding some blue to the eyes, because why the hell not? And by adding more and more white to my blue, I will progressively build up this glow on his chest and hand. You wanna leave the brightest paint in the middle of the chest, but also on the surrounding edges, as those are gonna be the place where this glow is gonna be the most. You can also get to a point where you are adding pure white, so keep in mind that after that, you cannot go any further. So if you wanna make it brighter, I would recommend making the rest of the glow a little darker instead. And with these effects done, the Iron Man is finished. Now I could probably make the glow a little better, but I did not want to spend too much time on it, so there you go. For the Black Widow, I will prepare a glaze made of Incubi Darkness. The process is fairly similar to Spider-Man's. Glaze over the whole bodysuit, and because of our zenithal highlight, top surface areas are gonna be tinted with our paint, but will still be somewhat transparent. Just like before, we are trying to avoid any coffee stains that might happen because of drying paint. Your goal is to make consistent layer, after which you can add more if you want. To deepen the shades on this miniature, I took Abaddon Black and mixed it with my Incubi Darkness. With a very well thinned down paint, we will selectively shade those areas that are not exposed to light. You should use mostly downstrokes here, as the paint should gather mostly on the darkest areas. We will work on the suit a little more later, but now I'm gonna paint the hair. I will put down a layer of corn red as a foundation from which you can build highlights quite easily. You can now mix with corn red any yellow that is bright enough to create a spectrum out of which you will progressively add more and more layers using thin lines. I personally used about 5 highlights, ending with a really bright orange. The general rule here is to keep adding brighter highlights to those areas mostly on top and that are exposed to light the most. The last highlight is gonna be mixed white and yellow, and it will be applied just to the hair ends and the hair around her face. And once I'm finished with that, I'm pretty happy with the outcome. We will move on to work on the face. You can use any skin color that you like. I am using Kislev Flesh. And now comes everyone's favorite part. Spread it all over her face. I will also paint that little part of her chest that is visible. My go-to shade when painting skin is Reikland Flesh shade, so get just a little bit of that on the entirety of her skin. To avoid any stains, you wanna quickly spread it in one even coat. Once the wash is dry, I will get the previous paint and get it on more elevated areas, leaving the wash in the recesses. That way you will get nice, natural looking face. I will add Screaming Skull to my original color, and I will slowly add layers on those elevated areas. This means her cheeks, nose, eyebrows, forehead and ears. Definitely don't rush this step, because the head is the most important part of the miniature. Like this, you can add more and more lighter paint to your mix till you are happy with how the face looks. At this point, I decided to get her eyebrows done. I got orange paint that I have mixed already for the hair and made thin lines above her eyes. Now don't pick a color that is way too bright, as that might just blend with the skin. When you are finished with the eyebrows, we will paint the eyes. To get a nice and fast result, you will just get black and make somewhat big dot on the eye socket. On this black dot, you will paint a white dot. And on this white dot, you will paint a small black dot. Simple, right? Well, it will take you some time and some adjustments here and there to make it look nice, but this is it in a nutshell. With Celestial Grey or any other more dark grey, we will pick out these straps on her legs and the gun casing too. The only thing to be cautious of is to not spill any paint on the blue suit. The gun in the casing is gonna be painted with whatever metallic you find fit. Now all the grey parts and the gun are gonna be shaded with neon oil. Definitely put emphasis on those recesses that separate the suit and the straps. With pure black, I will pick out borders of her suit around her chest. Try to be as precise as you can, so the skin and the suit around it stay clean. This is the progress that we got, and it looks quite good already. There are also some accessories around her wrists, her necklace and her belt, which are gonna be painted with yellow. So put down a layer of that, and once it is fully covered and fully dry, it is time to wash it with Agrax Earthshade. Once again, less is more in this case, and all you wanna achieve here is to make those little details stand out and create a little contrast. With lighter yellow, I'm gonna highlight all of these parts. Just take your time to slowly go over every edge on these. Now the Black Widow is almost finished, but since I'm not completely happy with the suit, I will darken the shades and highlight the peaks, including her woman peaks. For the darker areas, I have used Incubi Darkness with black once again, and for those gentle highlights, I added some white to the Incubi Darkness. With the shades shaded and the highlights highlighted, this miniature is now finished. For the cap, I will start with bright red to paint his boots and gloves. This step is actually super easy, so take a minute to relax. Taking Teclis Blue, and I will cover his superhero suit. Water down this paint just enough so the zenithal highlight has some effect on this miniature. Otherwise, this is still quite easy step, so just cover his pants, torso and helmet. With any brown that you like, cover all leather parts, just like his belt and the straps around his shoulders, and those little straps around his jaw. I will progress with Ulthuan Grey, which will cover all of the white parts. This sounds kinda weird, but that way you will be able to highlight what you get. We wanna also hit his striped pattern, so do that real quick. And if you are unsure which stripes to paint with white and which will be red, just look at the box art. And since I am painting the stripes already, I will get the red paint and finish this pattern. After finishing his heroic underwear, or whatever that is, I will paint metallics next. This will mainly cover little buckles and buttons around his belt and straps. And here you can see the progress that we got. Now you will see me jumping here from detail to detail, starting with the face, which I base coated with Kislev Flesh. Right after that, I wanted to see more progress on the shield, so I began painting the red parts. Once those were done, I got back to the Unthuan Grey and base coated the white parts. There is also this spot on the shield which is blue, so paint it with whatever blue you like, but I would recommend using different blue than the one on the suit to add more variety. Now, I will shade the suit with Nuln Oil. However, water down this wash by putting it on your wet palette first, so it is not that intense. Then I will simply wash the whole blue part of the suit. To shade the face, I am coming back to Rakeland Flesh Shade. Now you should be rather careful with the face, so our cat will not drown in it. You just wanna define his face features. With Aegir's Earthshade I will do quite the same for the gloves and the boots, however, you can be way more generous here with the wash. And now we will start finishing his face. Coming back to our base coat paint for the skin, you will cover most of the washed areas, leaving the wash just in the recesses. Try to thin down your paint and push the paint from darker places to lighter ones. And you probably already know this, but you will be adding more lighter and lighter paint to your existing one to create more highlights. And for the eyes, I have used pretty much the same process as for the Black Widow. So if you need to see that, feel free to go back to that part. Since we need to finish the white parts that are currently grey, take pure white to highlight the edges. I will also highlight his blue suit by adding white to my Teclis blue. You should really take your time to highlight all of the edges and all bulges that are visible on his pants. And I don't necessarily mean that bulge. Continuing on this highlight madness, it's time to hit those straps and belt. With Bugman's Glow, I will try to make thin lines on these leather parts. If you feel like you made too thick of a highlight, simply go back to your base color and fix it with that. For example here, I have made the highlight too thick on his left strap. After that, we will get Evil Sun Scarlet and make the red stripes on his superhero underwear brighter just on top. Push the pigment up, so it is mainly on the top third of the stripes. Apparently, I have totally forgot about this little Avenger logo on his shoulder, so paint it just like on the box art using red and white. To highlight our red gloves and boots, I will dry brush them with Riza Dust. When you put the paint on the brush, make sure to wipe some off using either your glove or a piece of paper. And with light brush strokes, you will leave the paint mainly on the edges of those parts. As you can see, this method is way faster, but not as precise. To finish our first Avenger, I will shade those cracks in his shield with the same oil wash that I used for the Iron Man. I was kinda lazy and I did not varnish his shield, so I was just really careful. But if you guys wanna be safe, definitely varnish it. And finally, the last touch is gonna be thin blue highlight on his shield. And there we go! Before we finish the bases on all of these, we will paint the Captain Marvel. For her superhero suit, I have chosen to combine Ahriman blue and Teclis blue. You can certainly use any blue that you want, but I will recommend using different one for each hero's suit so they don't look all the same. With this mix, I'm covering the blue parts of her suit. The rest of her suit will be covered in Evil Sun Scarlet, so paint her scarf thingy, gloves, boot plates and the area above her chest. To start off with the head, I will use Bugman's Glow as a foundation for the hair. Now it might be a little bit weird to start with brown for blonde hair, but that way you can build some nice highlights from there. Once again, we will apply Kislev Flesh to base coat her face with a nice watered down layer. And the last base color is gonna be Gorther Brown, which I applied for those areas that are still left unpainted. That means those stripes around her chest, the star in the middle, and the little thingy that holds her scarf. We will move on to shade this stunning and brave hero. With a watered down Dragonhof Nightshade wash, I will focus to shade mostly the recesses on her blue suit. Pretty similar process will follow with Fugen Orange for the red parts. For the face, I will use Reikland Flesh Shade. When it's all dried up, we will add white to our blue mix on the wet palette. You wanna build a spectrum from which you will take lighter and lighter paint to highlight her suit using really thin glazes. If you are having trouble building up the layers, you can experiment with having less water in your paint, but the smooth gradient will possibly be a little rougher. After some work done, this is what you should get. Here I'm just showing you which areas I highlighted the most. If this is too bright for you, don't add as much white to your blue. You will see, however, that in the end it will work out just fine. For the red parts of her suit, I am doing the same with Fire Dragon Bright. When you are doing your edge highlights, don't put there as much water, so you will have easier time applying the paint. But when you are not highlighting the edges, I would recommend progressively glazing over the areas that you want highlighted. And now her suit is mostly done, but since I still felt like the red needs additional highlight, I added some yellow to the orange for this final highlight. Finishing the face doing pretty much the same as with Captain America or Black Widow. That means coming back to the base color and progressively adding lighter color into the mix to highlight her main face features and leaving the wash in those recesses. For the eyes, it is exactly the same. Paint a black dot over the whole eye socket, then white dot, and then once more another black dot. After making some adjustments, this is the result. You can also add some lipstick and the eyebrows later. Picking Zamesi Desert, I will start highlighting the hair. You wanna cover most of the hair area, but leave out some brown in the recesses. You wanna gradually add lighter and lighter yellow using thinner and thinner lines. So that is basically what I'm doing here. And for the final highlight, just add some white to your yellow. And now to finish the brown parts, I will take yellow and white and create a non-metallic metal look. Since I don't wanna make this video too long, you can actually check out my other video where I am painting a sword using this very non-metallic metal technique. And I am sure that it will definitely offer you way more guidance. In short, you will push brighter colors towards the place of the reflection. Here I'm adding even lighter yellow combined with white, and I'm really aiming for the maximum contrast, so it looks metallic. Skip forward, and this is the result. And I know that I could do a better job here, but I was pretty happy with this already. Now with my heroes done, I will get back to Stonewall Grey to cover the bases. I will not thin down this paint too much, so it covers well. Some places, however, will not be grey, but metallic instead. So with my lead belcher, I covered those areas. You can also see that on Spider-Man's and Captain Marvel's bases are these rocks or debris, so instead of painting it straight grey, I added Screaming Skull to it. With Brass Scorpion or any brass/bronze color, you wanna cover this large building block here. And just be super careful when you are painting the bases, so your existing paint job is left untouched. I will combine these two little guys for a really dark brown wash. Since I also want to water it down quite a lot, I will mix it on my wet palette to get the water in there. After that, I will simply spread my wash on the whole base, focusing on the recesses. The last thing that we are gonna paint are the rims of every base. So pick your pure black and with multiple thin layers, get it covered. And definitely water it down so you will have a nice, smooth finish. And this is what we got. We are finally done painting the heroes. All that is left to do is to varnish your miniatures. For that, I will stick my miniatures to my improvised painting handle and spray them with matte varnish. I am using an airbrush for this, but a spray can will do just fine. Alright guys, so this is the video. I hope that you liked it, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up so the YouTube algorithm will bless me and will shove this video in front of others. And if you wanna see similar videos like this one, definitely subscribe to my channel because I will be releasing new content very soon. And if you have any feedback for me, it would be greatly appreciated if you leave down there a comment, and chances are that I will also reply to it. And in the next video we will finish the Marvel Crisis Protocol core set with the villains.